So some say America's secret destiny is in the dollar bill, and or the Da Vinci Code, and many things that could be hidden in the dollar. And I've seen a lot of things on YouTube, but a few things that I found based on a theory that I'll get into. But in essence, by the end of this, I'll also show how pull the proverbial sword from the stone by trisecting any angle with just a compass and a straight edge, which they say is 3. Plus, I'll also fundamentally solve the other 3 oldest challenges in mathematics, which is Pythagoras' challenge, Aristotle and Euclid, basically to square the circle, to draw any square and call it 1, a unit of 1, then be able to then make up a measurement relative to the base, and then cube that base or square it. So I'll do that all as well, but first on the American dollar, because it's all hidden right here relative to what I'm talking about. So first, let's look at George Washington, and a lot of people, the sign over here, we have the sine and the cosine. Now who's the sine? Anyone that's into that, yeah, it's been revealed as who runs the Federal Reserve. It's the Rothschilds, and that's the family crest, the signature in there. But more importantly, what's in the web is a geometry of ancient symbolism of the 12, kind of like a clock in essence. But it's the angles that are important, and you have the cosigner, and as Washington here, being the cosigner, the one that gives the authority in the Orphic egg, and then here, but it's all about what's the true one. Now on the other side, as also others have made, some tin hat videos done on the dollar have come up with, yes, this is relative to the Ark of the Covenant and a ratio measurement, and you have the angels if you want that, but what is it that we covet? Is it that you covet the one, the money, or in God do you trust? So is it about knowledge or the money? Well, let's take a closer look if that could be what they could be talking about, the angels. First, if you fold them in together, and this is particularly the fold that folds right on the M and the N meet together, as well if now this is measured as a perfect golden rectangle. If you go with the thing, meaning you take the square of it, just to confirm, and just to do a rough, come out, and then what you have here is a half of the square, a perfect golden rectangle, and you put that in half. Technically we have a 3 by 5 by 4 Pythagoras triangle. But also you have the 2 circles coming together, and the difference of it is a vesica Pisces that is of the radius, a radian of the circle. But the question is, what is the true one? Has always been the question. What is the real one? Well, if you take it and fold it, the 2 together, in this manner. If the true one is we anoint manna, or the money, unum, then what does that say when the circle becomes perfectly round, which is only 2 points, and also notice that the circle is in the square web, the 2 snake tails are opposing each other, and close up we have the greed states. Oh, but back over here to the Fibonacci code, and you have pi, which is squared, which is tau. Plus you have the sacred bat here, by the way, that some say the snub nose of the snub-nosed bat represented, symbolizes what's on the skull and bones in Yale University. But it's a sacred animal just because it's a phi, meaning that the lowercase p, phi, 0.61803398875 ratio, as opposed to the great owl, which is phi, capital P ratio. So as opposed, what is the true one of the phi is the question. But now, for the greed states, you also have the pyramid, the eye of the pyramid falling upon the spear of itself. And this half of the Star of David, the cross is against the Pythagorean triangle on the eye of the pyramid. As greed is the Novus Order, Or could the choice possibly be to anoint consciousness as the and the e pluribus unum, the all become one? And it was a story that goes back, well, I'll give more of that later. But then it points to another major event that was part of all ancient cultures, is you also have the eye of the galaxy rising as the egg of the phoenix is on the southern hemisphere, and that relates to a code of quarks, how all matter vibrates into existence. If E equals mc squared is true, but the whole formula of E equals mc squared as the mathematical equation is all related in those numbers I just gave you that I can coordinate from the dollar bill. But what is the answer? The answer, if you fold the ones all one together, where just the one, fold it right on the point of the one and bring it to the bottom point of the one, you have the spear of Athena, the great uniting spear of Athena, where united, the great, as the true one, which is the spear which Athena pulled, revealing the web of lies, and the web of lies was all based on truth. But once the needle was pulled, the web of lies came undone. Now going into trisecting an angle, a few things that should be known to be helpful to understand that is the flower of life's geometry. If you're not a thing, you could draw this by drawing any circle. Basically keep the compass the same. And you go around, and then I could draw another circle around that, and that edge there will give me another circle and around. So now I've trisected that into 3. Oh, quick little example. I'm about to expand space and time and show it relatively it happens, and hopefully anyone can understand. If you've ever heard how space can expand and contract at the same time, it's a relative principle. If you blow 2 bubbles, like any kid can do with air, and those 2 bubbles are attracted without any resistance of wind to each other, you'll notice that they'll come together and form a straight line between the 2. By doing this, they share that extra space, and the extra space relative to the circle that they gain, they can circumspectively become bigger. Now the bubble hasn't become any bigger, but its relationship from its center to its circumference is now bigger. So it actually has expanded by trying to contract into the tightest space shared with another one. Now, if you also, 7 circles fit concentrically outside of one, and you can draw that circle around in. So if you take now 7 circle bubbles, just to jump up, what happens is you actually have the same thing going on, but funny enough, if you shade in just these Vesica Pisces and try to figure out, like Aristotle did, what the volume of just this half circumference is, then you realize that technically that part is 1/6 in this ratio, but you'll see it forms which says another sacred geometry in there, the Star of David. But that's also relative, that you notice if the universe was made of bubbles in a perfect bubble universe, if that's all there was, that you would see that all the bubbles would push together. And now the 7th bubble has completely sacrificed itself for the other bubbles, giving up its skin. So now all the other 6 bubbles can actually increase by 1 bubble's length, split by 6, which would give you, on a ratio of that as it's expanding, is a phi ratio, just based on that. Now you've noticed that the sacrificial bubble here has now become a perfect square. So in a universe of bubbles, all perfect bubbles would be perfect squares. So in essence, you actually have a matrix of what would be theoretically round would be theoretically squared in essence. Now that we're going to relate to space. The other motion we have is vibration and light. So if relative to speaking to numbers, the first thing if I'm going to solve Pythagoras' thing, we have to kind of think like a Pythagorean. So we have to understand how he related into numbers, that numbers were relative to a philosophy and a shape. So the 0 is the circle. And everything, first we have to understand nothing. And if we had nothing as the universe, just think nothing in a universe to explain it, I'm going to simplify explaining nothing by first just explaining a circle of nothing. Because in essence, in the end, if you can understand the circle and its relationship to the center of the circle, which I'll call the outside nothing, the macrocosm, the inside of this dot is the microcosm, and the circle will be your cosm. So if you understand your cosm, you'll theoretically understand everything outside the dot, the circle, and everything inside the dot. So the relative portion, so how far are you in? So the relative portion of this being 0, and if this is 1 in relativity, if we split that in half, we get 2. We have the first line of a coordinate. Now the fundamentality of shapes doesn't begin till 3, because the first point you can shape a square, 4, a pentagon, a cube. And theoretically, if you take those things, if you look at this, in essence, you cube them, you still have another shape at 12. So the missing Pythagorean shape beyond that was actually this, and this is the key to the whole thing. Will come down to this is a new shape, because you've noticed the 1 has become 4. If you notice the same little guy here, now there's 4. So there's a splitting of the cell. On the 7th became 1, and it split on the 8th, so it's only outside of it is reflating, so you're becoming outside the circle. To explain to that, if you know angles and you keep drawing this up and running the angles down and drawing bigger, you'll notice that all you have to do is add by 180 and divide by the radians, and it always goes by this up and the corresponding degrees. Now, if anyone knows the little basics about numbers, that 9 is a magical number. You can take 9 and any other number, if you multiply it by a 9, you gotta go.
Yeah. You want to finish it up?